Hi, I'm Lottie.
And I'm Christian.
And we're Circus District.
Your source for online news, classes, and all things circus in Washington, D.C.
Thanks for being here.
Hey everyone, Christian here to provide your most formal introduction to the Circus District YouTube channel. I want to let you know up front that this video may contain coarse language. It also includes discussions about sexuality and gender identity, which I hope will inspire conversations in your own household. We know that the DMV circus community is kind, loving, and respectful, and we wish to keep it that way on our YouTube channel. If you wish to continue with subtitles, please click the CC button on your video screen right now. With that, please enjoy the video. So hello everyone, and welcome to the Pride Month interview series for the Circus District. We are so happy to have an extremely talented cast of circus humans joining us for these discussions. This series is meant to highlight the multifaceted LGBTQIA+ community of circus artists in the DMV, and to illustrate that pride is not a static concept with one set definition. Pride means many different things to many different people, and we're here to celebrate that. To give you some background, if you're just meeting us, Circus District is this online circus community in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. We provide a weekly here and now roundup of virtual events and in-person events, and we also publish regular articles on Dispatch, your source for local circus news, academics, book reviews, and more. As you watch these interviews on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, don't forget that we have an actual website, circusdistrict.com, where you can find plenty of local resources and information to help you along on your circus journey. And you can also contact us by emailing circusdistrict@gmail.com or messaging us on Facebook or Instagram. So with that all out of the way, let me tell you first who I am. My name is Christian Klock. My pronouns are he/him. And I started doing circus at age 6 when I learned to juggle, and have been amazed by where juggling has taken me since then. I am one of the co-founders of Circus District since 2017, and have been performing and teaching full-time since 2016. I am celebrating Pride as a gay and queer individual. So now let me get to our guest this afternoon, evening, morning, whenever you happen to be watching this. His name is Thomas Martin, and he is a multi-talented aerialist who has performed at the Kennedy Center, Saks Restaurant and Lounge, at the Capitol Pride Festival, and many more events that I don't have time to list right now. He specializes in aerial, fabric, dance trapeze, and chain loops, and he is a dynamic performer with captivating movement and technical skill, if I may say so. Thomas, if you want to introduce yourself, tell us your pronouns, and also talk a little bit about how you first got into circus arts. Take it away.
Totally. So, yeah, I use he, him pronouns, and I first got into circus art, I think actually through burlesque, which is like really, I guess, I don't know, it makes sense a little bit. But one of my really great friends actually was like, hey, do you want to come take this lyra class with me? And I was like, sure, and no idea what that was. Literally went upside down and was like, I need this is what I want to do. And since that day, I haven't really stopped going upside down. It's just
And was that class in, did you take that locally, or was that somewhere else?
it was in Baltimore, actually, yeah.
Nice.
It was with, I know her as Lizzie Lyra. I actually know her last name now, and I cannot remember what this name is.
We do have a lot of people in our community where we're like, we have a lot of names for them, which is one of the exciting things about this interview series, is I feel like we get to know people's, street names, and also like what they, many other identities. So let's see what my next question is. So when you hear the word pride, talk about what that sort of means to you, and also how that meaning maybe has changed over time when you first encountered the word to where you are now.
So, I guess I first identify as a gay man, so that's kind of the first place. For me, pride has always really been about having the freedom to express whoever you are and whatever that means for you, like in that moment, that day. And that is like always changing for me. Like the first time I went to a Pride festival, it was like so overwhelming. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy, because I came out pretty late in my life, like past, like, I don't know, like 19. So my first Pride, I was like, oh my gosh, small town farmer boy does not know how to handle this. And since then, it's just been like so much fun, learning more about myself and how I identify like in the different queer aspects in my life, and how I can like bring that into my art and how that influences all the things that I do. And it kind of always goes back and forth, so it's always changing. Uh,
You talked about being a farm boy. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up kind of like in like split state situation. My parents were separated, but my father lives in northern Maryland. My mom lived in lower Pennsylvania. So my mom has always been super into horses, and like we always had like, since I was in middle school, at least like 4 or 5 horses. So we had to like manage a farm and feed all the things and like mow acres of grass. Oh God. So yeah, it's like kind of like that was my childhood in a way, part of it at least.
And did you feel like that environment growing up in Maryland and Pennsylvania was a place where you had role models who might represent what, like, you know, might represent queer identities or might represent somebody who you could see yourself being at some point?
Honestly, no. Yeah, it's growing up where I was, it was very conservative. It's very Republican in all of the ways that that could mean. But yeah, it's super conservative. So I honestly didn't. My first gay person or queer person I knew like actively was out as not straight. uh, was in college. So I met them probably, or these people freshman year of college. It's like, oh wait, there's a whole group of people that makes sense to me. Like this is perfect. So that was my intro into it. So it's not so much like role like a role model to look in up to, but like peers that I have met and now have maintained some of those friendships still. But those are the people that kind of helped me come out and go through my own journey and right.
Nice. So you talked about coming out late, and I can definitely relate to that because I came out to my parents when I was in high school and then said nothing about it until senior year of college to my friends. And I think what I realized when I came out is that it's a different process for everybody. And so, you know, late, early, it almost like feels like if you are watching this and you're thinking about your own identity, whatever time you feel comfortable sharing anything about your identity is the right time. So that's the message we want to put forth in this interview series. But I definitely relate to the fact that there is sort of a conventional way that when kids grow up, coming to terms with identity, that for some it is easier just because the broader culture accepts those identities, whereas for others it is more difficult. And so it feels like if you don't come to terms with those certain things, that you're late, you need to catch up, you're never going to get that time back, that sort of thing. So just talk a little bit about what that process was like for you coming out, how it felt, and what friends were there for you and what they did to help you get through that process.
So yeah, the the process of me coming out was, a mixed bag. Wasn't all butterflies for sure. There's a lot of growing pains with me and my family, like in that process. Everything's like great now. Um, but one of the things that really helped me to come out to my family and to everyone around me was having like support, like a support network of some kind. So having like friends and people that even if they're not out, but like like they just don't care, like they're like, yeah, like I have a billion gay friends at home, or whatever. There's like those people that are just so accepting and such a positive like influence on you. Those are the people to like keep close. And that support is what really allowed me to feel comfortable coming out. And funny enough, actually, my I came out to my father's side of the family on Pride because Baltimore Pride happens during Father's Day, like weekend. It's like it's kind of like a funny little thing. So my father was like, "Hey, are you coming over this weekend to celebrate Father's Day?" And I was like, "Oh no, I'm busy. I have like XYZ plans." Trying to like kind of keep it to myself in a way. And then he was like, "Oh, well, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I guess now is the time. And I'm like, I'm going to Pride. He's like, what's Pride? And I was like, well, I'm gay. So it was like a whole like funny moment that happened there, but timing wise at least. So yeah, that was definitely interesting for sure. Um, yeah, I don't know that. Yeah, I guess that explains a lot of those things. And I'll say too, it's been interesting this year. I've had a lot of people in my life and people that I grew up with come out in different identities recently and like kind of learn more about themselves, even like in our 30s now. Um, and not say like, oh, like I'm gay or like straight or like whatever that could mean for them and however they want to identify, like gender wise, sexual orientation, whatever that could mean, like later in life. So it it's really cool to see people like learn more about them and then like be okay with that, you know?
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Another thing that we want to drive home is like that sometimes coming out is can be a very small thing, but it feels like a big deal to you because it's just being more honest about how you feel about anything, and particularly about how you feel about who you're attracted to or not attracted to, or how you identify as a person. So that's an excellent point. In terms of your circus journey and the parallel to your journey of identity, how did you feel? When did you learn when you first took that lyric class? How old were you?
I think I was like 20 or 21. So yeah, a few years after, like I came out sophomore year of college, and my first lyric class was like junior year into senior year of college or something like that. Like so, it was
And
like
and
short
how
term.
long was it until you got to like do your first performance?
Oh, gosh, my first performance, I did like a student recital thing. My college actually offered an aerial dance like class, so I took that class, and part of that class is you do a small like performance with that. But my first like actual what I like kind of qualify as my first like performance, I don't know, um, where I was like, oh yeah, this is like the thing. Was there's like two markers, I guess. There was the first one I did with this company called DNA Theater. They were based in Baltimore. I don't think that they're doing anything currently. But I performed with them. I actually started with them as like a graphic design intern, and then they found out I was taking all these circus classes. And they're like, hey, do you want to be in the company? So like I auditioned and got in. So then within a couple months I was like on a stage. So that was crazy. um, and then the Zip Zap Circus show is also a first one for me too. I did a performance with Baltimore Aerial Dance, Bad, and that was with my coach at the time, Nina Charity, and she like had all of her students come in, and that was like super fun. This was like my first.
So that's pretty amazing to hear, just because I feel like you have such a presence as a performer. So did you do much performing before that, like prior to getting into circus earlier in your life?
Um, Not much actually. Yeah, it was like I kind of growing up, I was always like super shy, which is like funny now. Because I'm very much not that person now. But yeah, like finding circus and finding dance. I started with dance a little bit before circus, so that kind of had some experience with that and movement before. But yeah, I think that it was just I found an art form that really worked for me. I was always into visual arts, so it was like really easy for me to like paint and draw and sculpt and do all of those things, and which is what my degree is in. But when I found circus and movement, that's where it's like that clicked. It's like felt like coming home in a way, like oh, this is the thing that like I feel like I was made to do this. And like had that moment and that connection, and I just dove in hard.
Do you feel like there was an adjustment to when you were first getting on stage, feeling like you were just kind of rushing through it, or just trying to present something that was movement and aerial based, to a point where you felt like you were presenting more of yourself over time? Or
Oh my gosh, yeah. I remember that DNA performance. If I were to watch it again now, but we all learn, we all grow. But yeah, I definitely was like so nervous getting on that stage, and I was like, "What am I doing? Like, do I remember the choreography that I made?" And my first one was like 5 minutes long to a Florence and the Machine song, so it was like super long. Do not recommend doing a 5 minute long song as your first act ever. Like 2.5 is like perfect. And I crammed in, so it's like literally I think every trick that I knew at the time was in that one act and just like slammed together. It's like I got off stage in the back and was like huffing and panting and dying like every single time I did that act. So yeah, there was a learning curve for sure. That you kind of have to learn how to perform. It's not just like the skills. The skills are all like the backbone. That there's so much more added on top of it to make it work, and that's something that have had a lot of really great people and role models in my life through circus that have helped me with that a lot.
And do you feel like the coming out process has sort of made your performances? I mean, I guess I'm not like it was kind of at the same time as you were getting into performing that you were coming out. But do you feel like that process has allowed you to be sort of just a more genuine performer?
So yeah. hmm So I think the coming out process for sure allowed me to like shed some walls that I really had like up my whole life prior to that point, pretty much. So once all of that, I could like release, like take that like gay breath. I don't even know what to call it, but have that moment and then to release all of that anxiety and worry because whatever it's done is done. So whatever's going to happen is going to happen at this point. And that's kind of the same mentality that I bring to me on stage, where I've trained, I've worked, I've rehearsed, I've done all of these things before. Um, so when I step out on that stage, I can just like live in that moment and bring down my walls and say, okay, like let me present a piece of me on this stage through my apparatus or through whatever I'm doing. Um, so yeah, I think coming out has really did give me or allow me the space to be free on stage and live in that moment with the audience and like have that connection with them.
Nice. And you talked about some circus people who had helped you along sort of in that process of performing. Um, if you want to talk about who those people were, you can do that, or you can also talk about just like what were some of the um, sort of tips that they gave you or experiences that they offered you that helped you along in feeling comfortable as a performer.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just like there's been so many. I feel like being a performer, there's a lot of times we talk a lot about how hard we work and how much we train and all these things, and that's very valid. Like you have to work hard. But there is also like this component of like luck. I think that it kind of goes into it in a weird way. Um, so for me, I that luck piece for me is meeting people like Kelly Jo Stahl or Gwen Flanagan Cox. I think now. Or even like one of my show directors, Derek Brown. Like all of these people really had, even if they weren't directly in circus, they knew how to be on stage. Robin Miller is another one that comes to my mind that really helped me like say, you can do anything up there. Like it doesn't honestly do what you want to do, but how are you going to do that? Like what are you going to leave us with when you're done? Like those kinds of questions. So it wasn't just, oh, how straight is your leg or how are you reaching, but like what is the feeling you want to leave with the person watching your act and like watching you perform on stage. So those people really pushed me as a performer, and some of them also as a technician to get like good lines and the flexibility and all that stuff, the technique.
And how would you say the circus world has grown to provide more support for queer circus artists over time? And where do you think maybe the circus industry could do better?
Yeah. I think that local circus has a really like circus has a really beautiful like magnetism, bringing in like people from all over. I feel like circus is like really good at saying like accepting anyone for who they are, especially like local circus, like the circus school that I work for in the dark circus arts and then the trapeze school of New York. Those are the two places that pop up in my head, and Monarcha on Flight too. all of those places have giant queer communities. They have like a little hub for like the queer circus people in a way. And then you kind of like find each other, and then you have like your little community. You start like training together, taking classes together, and it's like really cool to see that like grow and build um, through those schools. And it's something that I've seen like even traveling into different schools across like US and doing different things happens all over. Like I've been into like circus schools in Texas, and like it's super gay and queer there too. I don't know what about it like attracts us, but here we are. So it's kind of like a little safe haven for a lot of people, I think, too, where they can just be themselves and have that authenticity. I think the places for them to grow, honestly, for me, is going to be like that higher, like corporate big production show, gender role, like that kind of thing. Locally, I think we're doing a really wonderful job, but I think once you get beyond that, start broadening the scope of the shows, we could really push some boundaries on the stereotypical, like, these people perform these acts. It's like, okay, you are like a pretty bendy girl, you're going to be a contortionist or get on the lira, or like you're a big dude with muscles, so you're going to be a porter. Things like that. I think we can definitely push that boundary a lot harder. And there are definitely places and spaces that are doing that for sure. So please, oh my gosh, yes.
And when you talk about the larger world, you're not necessarily talking about like Chipotle, McDonald's. You're talking about sort of like larger corporate, the industry.
Yeah,
Okay.
larger corporate like industry, like circus industry, like the
Mhm.
business of circus.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And where do you think the change sort of lies there? Because I think it's always an interesting conversation between the person who is the event manager, who is planning the event, providing the entertainment, so kind of the liaison between the client who's putting on the event and you, the talent. Um, so do you think it's a bit of both, kind of like incorporating what different ideas and different roles might be played for both the event manager and also for the clients who are booking this entertainment?
Yeah, I don't have a great answer for that, unfortunately. I'm trying to think in my
It's a
head
tough
like,
question.
yeah, it's a loaded question. I'm like, I don't know who. I don't think it would fall into any one person. It has to really be like a community effort to like really stay strong and vigilant through those things. Um I yeah, I don't have like a all of us.
Yeah.
And I think as performers, so my perspective is usually as a performer, I'm starting to look into producing shows and do some more of that. But as a performer, it's kind of like you have to be okay with giving space to other people. I think that's the thing that I've kind of learned, where it's like, okay, this is a really great story, and you may have asked me to perform or be a part of this production or tell the story, help you tell the story on stage. And sometimes you have to ask yourself, am I the right person for that, or is there another person that could do that more effectively or better? You know, and sometimes that answer is yes, and you kind of have to take that. All right, cool. Well, I'm maybe not. That's kind of, you give space to someone else that could really use it sometimes.
Yeah, that's an awesome point. So I think mainly like taking some of the ego out of it from the point of not only the talent who might be booked for a certain thing, looking out for community. Oh wait, you would actually be great for this. You're a great roller skater and you can juggle at the same time or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
So looking out for our other community members who might be better suited for certain jobs and not seeing it as something that's going to like impact us negatively, but actually grow our community. So in this time off that we've had, where there have been no live events and we haven't been able to get that energy from the crowd, besides obviously making us as performers stir crazy, what has this time kind of done for you in terms of what you're looking forward to coming back in this sort of like slow return that we're having into having live events and in-person events?
I think it gives you a lot of time to like look into yourself and find more within you could bring out on stage. We talked about this, I think, a little bit ago, about how coming out in pride like shed layers off to then be able to present a more authentic version of who I am. on stage. And I think this time is allowing something similar. Something that I know that for me, I love being busy. I just love to like perform. I love to teach. I love to do all of the things. You can ask my now fiance. Like we used to before the pandemic. We had a calendar that was like this goal day. Do not book a show for, because he's also a performer. So like we have to really work together to like make it happen sometimes. Um, so yeah, I love being busy in this time when we are forced to not be busy and to like, okay, have nothing on the agenda for today, like nothing. It gives you some time to learn more about who you are. I think you can take the time. You think you learn a bit every time. So then when you come back into performing, it's gonna be different. Like the way that I'm moving now is different than how I was moving prior to the pandemic, like for sure. And I'm really excited to present a different version of myself on stage, um, where it's not gonna be like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think if there's anything that's been constant, it's that we've all been changing a lot.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, you're like, I don't know. I feel like you find like new passions. You learn something new. Like I don't know. I learned how to bake sourdough bread. Not that that's gonna bake sourdough bread on stage. That'd be. I mean, oh my gosh, you want to see me like fold dough for like 2 hours? No one.
It could become the new aerial apparatus
It's like stringy sourdough.
as long as there's not enough natural leavening in there.
Exactly, 100%.
So another thing that I think about a lot when I talk to people who are in circus arts is kind of different moments. I feel like a lot of people have moments in whether they're learning or whether it was the first time they performed or some great experience they had with a gig or a terrible experience they had with a gig. Those are often very defining moments for us that sometimes like crystallize what we do or don't want to do with our lives. So, are there any kind of moments that kind of come to mind in terms of shaping? I know you talked a little bit about teachers that you had, but are there any other moments that you could talk about, maybe working in the industry that have sort of crystallized where you hope to be headed in the future?
There, I feel like my moments, I have some really proud moments. Like I know when you introduced me, you mentioned like the Kennedy Center, like performing there. Like that was one of my most proud moments to like be able to be in that space in that building and do what I do. And like that I will like carry for with me forever. Um, but there's also like other moments too. Like one of the things that I've learned through pandemic and the growth that I was talking about was that before I feel like I was performing so much for like larger audiences or not necessarily specifically like queer spaces. So one thing that I'm trying to do more of coming out of pandemic is to get more on like queer stages. So getting more into like drag scenes and burlesque scenes and those traditionally like gay and queer and LGBTQ like IA events, because that's something that I did not have as much of before. I got a little sidetracked, I think. So one of the moments I actually had recently is I recently did a show. One of the first ones I did, actually, I think it's the first live event that I did coming back from the pandemic. It was a drag show called the Chromatica Ball in Baltimore, and I just did like a 4-minute lyra act, and it was actually a super low lyra, so I couldn't like. I think the people, the immediate vicinity could see me, but like it was a whole thing. But that was a moment for me because that felt so incredible to share circus and this art form with a community that doesn't always get to see it. Or that may not be involved in it currently or could be like it's just it's a good thing to share. And a lot of the other moments I'll have a lot of moments like midway through performing, and that's weird. Like I'll be in the middle of throwing a giant trick and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, like I'm doing this. Like I'm sitting here in front of however many hundreds of people. Like I did a TED talk one time where I did a performance, and I was like, I'm performing in a TED talk. Like this is crazy. Like what? Like, and you're sitting there in the ring. It's yeah. So you have those moments like halfway, you're like 30 feet in the air. Well, I was 30 feet in the air, and it's like, all right, I'm doing this split in front of all these people, and here we are. This is great. So yeah, I think this moment's happened a lot for me, like during an act. Yeah.
Yeah. For me as a juggler, it's like, oh shoot, I have to catch that. That happened.
It's like,
Um,
oh, you're there.
that's a fabulous point of like whether you're at a small event performing for 10 people or it's being broadcast to millions of people across the world. It's great to think about how it actually feels in that moment and take stock of yourself, even when you have to make sure that you don't fall on the ground or yourself in the face with the juggling club. But that always has meaning to somebody in the audience, and whether it's a group of 5 people or millions, it can make a huge difference. You talked a bit about the drag community. What has that community kind of shown you about what's possible with performance?
I'm still learning, honestly. My partner is a drag performer. So we're learning. Well, they've been a drag performer for a couple of years now, so we are getting more involved. Well, he is already, and I'm trying to get more involved into the drag community out here. And that space has it kind of it reminds me a lot of like, again, like circus in a weird way, where you're given these tools to express something like from yourself, or you're allowed to express something from yourself, no matter how weird or crazy that could be. um it's just different tools, like for me it's going to be aerial apparatus, like chains, fabrics, trapeze, lyre, whatever, but whatever it could be. For them it could be like costuming or makeup, or like a wig or no wig, or whatever like they want to do and they've conceived. So it's really interesting to get involved with that. See, okay, what can I learn from these people, because they're so talented in different capacity than I have talent in, and how can I take that with me um, into another show? Yeah.
And you said you hope to see more circus like kind of overlapping with drag performances, right?
Oh yeah, I like. Oh my gosh, I want to so bad. It's like one of the things I actually, when I mentioned, I before the pandemic happened. This is like will make me cry a little bit, but I was supposed to produce a show called Spectacular. It's like a Moulin Rouge like themed circus drag show. So there's supposed to be this whole like combination of like circus and drag and like this like mishmash of like all these things, like all this talent that Baltimore and DMV has that we can bring into the stage, because I think there's something that could be really beautiful in that combination that is not currently happening, at least in our area.
Yeah, I remember actually that distinctly as one of the first events that I went. I already had on our circus district calendar, and I had to go. Oh,
I
maybe
know.
maybe in April or
Second time though. Oh, that was the worst part though. Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It's really torture for anyone who's producing shows to see that process happen. But hopefully, we're on the cusp of something new where
it happened at some point.
yeah, absolutely. So you heard it here first, everyone. Spectacular is happening in the future. Put it on your calendar for some time.
Sometime in the future, we'll see when.
We're looking forward to that. So I like to finish my interviews on something that's close to my heart, which is food. So if you could talk a little bit about a meal that you either like to cook, or if you're not into cooking, something that you really like to eat.
I love cooking. It's like one of the things I always loved it, but again, busy person, so like Chipotle was the vibe for a long time. But now during pandemic, I can cook. So uh, I don't know. Like I've just been really into just learning about how to make good food. The other day, I was super proud of myself. The other day, I grilled like a giant like half of a salmon, and it was like the most delicious thing I've ever made. It was so good. And that was a really proud moment for me. Like grilling fish, like that's not who does that.
Grilled fish and sourdough. Those are big
It's
steps.
kind of
Those are big steps in the kitchen.
It's like
Awesome.
combining, grilled fish and salmon abilities. I love it.
So if there's anything else you would like to add, go for it.
Um,
You feel we covered enough
yeah,
territory.
I'm happy.
Great. Awesome. But we thank you guys for tuning in, and we want to give a big virtual round of applause to Thomas Martin. Thank you very much. That was incredible. And we hope to see you next time.
Thank you all so much. I super appreciate it.